So how do you find your customers for access to?
There's a couple of unique ways, right? Like there's a standard way of marketing, standard way of referrals. There is, a large part of the work that we do is focused on community, right? Like we like to say, like we're community member candidate focused, right? I should mention Young Professionals of Seattle, which I started a long time ago, is now a 501(c)(3). It is a chapter of an organization, nationwide organization that focuses particularly on connecting community members with resources. Might be professional network, it might be, a job, it might be, introductions to other, it might be services of nonprofits that exist in your area. Um, a lot of the work that we do with Access is in service of YP community, right? Like we found a need within community members that participate in professional events. Oftentimes it is around careers. Like, we again we do the work through, a commu with a through a community focused lens, um, first. That is our priority, and I think that's what makes Access 2 different than any other staffing company or staffing companies that I've seen, is that we're primarily focused on the candidate, not necessarily on generating revenue for companies, right?
So here in Seattle, too, like there's the 100,001 staffing recruiting companies focused on diversity. What's make yours
I
different?
think, I mean, if I'm speaking candidly, I do think that, like you mentioned before, a lot of that's performative, right? I think, again, a lot of staffing companies are a lot of companies are revenue driven, right? Like you follow money, you follow the dollars. The dollars, uh, the dollars have existed, or at least in, perceivably in the DEI space, right? If you're not hiring for diversity, then you're going to get left out, right? So I think a lot of companies have to say they're doing that. There are a lot of companies that were created, you know, uh, 2020 or thereafter. There are a lot of companies that have kind of pivoted their branding or their messaging around the things that they care about in that space, that I've seen. Um, but are you truly doing that, right? You're doing that because the clients that generate revenue, that drive revenue for you, are saying they want this, right? Of course, you got to fulfill a need. So you're going to say that you're going to do that. Like, how are you doing that? Question that I asked, that I would ask these companies,
Yeah,
like,
like are you still going to University of Washington to recruit every
well, yeah,
day
who are you recruiting from, right?
versus
Like,
going like
how? Like, it's
HBCU or something?
sure,
Or
right? Like, like, and I think there are, very like, elementary, ways to try to diversify the talent pool they recruit from, but, like, are you focused on that, right? Or, once companies decide that, like, diversity is no longer a care of mine,
mhm,
like, is that gonna be something that you do? Or
mhm.
are you going to, focus on the things that they tell you they want, right? Which I see a lot in business. I don't necessarily fault companies for that,
Yeah,
right? Like, you can't exist if you don't have a product that's relevant to an audience, right? Like,
yeah.
you can't, right? But, you see a lot of companies that say that they focus on diversity, equity, inclusion in my experience, it's because companies say that that's what they want.
Let me ask you this, right?
Yeah.
So let's suppose to make it kind of simple, suppose like there's like a group of people in like we'll say downtown Seattle, downtown Bell, they're really doing really well
Mhm.
and they want to bring people up, right?
Mhm.
So and there's a group of say South Seattle not doing well, economic disadvantage. Is it responsible for people in downtown Seattle down to Bellevue to go down there and bring them up? Or for the people at the bottom, so to speak, reach out for opportunities?
Well, I mean, I think that's a personal decision. Like speaking for, in your example, the people in Bellevue, right? Like if that's something that you care about and you want to do, then identify avenues to be able to do that, right? I think there are avenues that exist that you can find so you can do that, right? Like I don't think that's the responsibility of anybody necessarily. Like it's not me. It's not on me to tell you what you're responsible for
Mhm.
necessarily, right? Would it be nice? Sure, right? But again, like we live in a society where we have free thought. And if that's not something you want to spend your time doing, then you don't have to. Um, uh, Now for the individual that you know economically disadvantaged, asking if it's their responsibility to kind of pull themselves up by the bootstrap, right? Yeah, that's an, I guess, an age old phrase that you need to find ways to pull yourself up with the bootstrap. Like, but the realities are these, kind of goes back to the systemic issues that are at play that maybe aren't, not maybe, but are definitely not acknowledged enough. That like, how do you pull yourself up from the bootstrap if you've never seen it happen? if you don't have boots, if you don't have straps, right? If you've never been part of a network of individuals, where there are individuals who know how to do that, right? We are all creatures of habits. We are all a product of our environments. If I'm born into a society, like, if I'm born into, you know, East Detroit, and I've known nobody to go to college or to be successful, my definition of success is entirely different than somebody else's, right?
But when I was younger,
Yeah.
like high school, my dream was to be a manager of a Burger King.
Okay. Right, right.
To me, that was like, man, they make good money.
Sure.
I was like, that's my goal right then.
Right, right. Again, like, I mean, I think we fail to realize and acknowledge the fact that we are all products of our environment, right? The average person does not move very far from where they were born,
No,
right?
I mean, the stats show most Americans, like, if they move, they might move at the most 2 hours away.
Right, right.
Like, no one's moving. Had a guy on the podcast recently, Charles Connor. He actually moved from Mississippi to Seattle maybe 5 years ago, right?
Sure.
Most people don't do that shit.
No, my mom moved from East Detroit to Seattle, right? Left everything she knew. For me to have similar opportunity to
Mhm.
others that didn't grow up in Detroit, right? Like, and like I think it really does. Oftentimes, we fail to acknowledge the fact that it takes exceptional work for a lot of people to have a fair shot, even in today's America,
Mhm.
right? Like, it's very easy to say we all have equal opportunity.
Yeah, but did it
Sure,
really?
opportunities exist, but do we have access to the opportunities?
Yeah.
Do we have knowledge of how to put ourselves in front of those opportunities? Like, there are a lot of things that, like, there are a lot of gaps between the individual and the opportunities that we all say exist, right?
Let me ask you this. Um, let's suppose you give your 40-year-old self, suppose you tell your 40-year-old self, learn these skills. Learn these skills and you'll be successful. Like for me, I would tell my 40-year-old self, any like young kid, I would tell them like, learn how to code,
Mhm.
learn how to speak publicly, and learn physics.